Lilo and Stitch is Disney's latest effort to recreate an animated classic into live action. I said before that these live action Disney remakes have been pretty hit and miss for me, mostly miss, but for whatever reason, I was still really looking forward to seeing this one. I love Lilo and Stitch as a kid. I watched the movies, I watched the show on the Disney Channel, and the trailers for this seemed fun. It looked like they kind of recaptured that same chaotic energy in Stitch. They got Chris Sanders back to do the voice, which I thought was really cool. It just seemed like this was maybe going to be the live action remake to break the curse of Disney delivering kind of mediocre to bad remakes of these classic animated movies. I do think Disney kind of puts themselves in a no-win situation when they make these live action remakes. You're going to make half the audience upset if you make a shot for shot, beat for beat remake of the original, and you're going to make the other half mad if you deviate from the source material. So there's really nothing that Disney could do to make everyone happy in this situation. So even though this is a remake and it's almost impossible not to compare it to the original, I really wanted to go in and be as objective as possible and kind of review this movie based on its own merit. So first I'll focus on the positives. Lilo and Stitch is at its best when it focuses on Lilo and Stitch. Between the animation and the voice acting from Chris Sanders, I feel like they perfectly recaptured the animated Stitch and brought him to live action successfully. I also feel like the actress they chose to play Lilo did a pretty good job of bringing that character to life. In this movie, Lilo is basically a Dennis the Menace type character, and then when she meets Stitch, Stitch matches that energy probably times 10. This movie delivers all the fun you would expect to see of Lilo and Stitch running around Hawaii, kind of causing havoc, having fun, and kind of forming that bond between them and creating that ohana. To me, Disney is at their best when they make movies that are kid-friendly, but not necessarily made for kids. Lilo and Stitch, unfortunately, feels like a movie that is made for kids. I think my biggest problem with this movie is that it feels kind of like a dumbed-down version of the original. There's a lot of situations where characters will kind of over-explain things. It's kind of exposition-heavy. I'm a big believer in show don't tell, and this movie kind of tells and doesn't show. And I feel like when they do that, it feels like the creators are not really putting trust in the audience to understand these things. One aspect of this movie that definitely did not work for me were Jumba and Pleakley. They were clearly meant to be kind of the comic relief of this movie, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work. I didn't think they were funny. I didn't find them entertaining. They honestly kind of took me out of the movie a bit. The characters that they were playing just felt like they were from a completely different movie. And I say that as a pretty big Zach Galifianakis fan. They do make some noticeable changes in this movie, so I don't want to give away any spoilers. But in about the third act of the movie, there's just these scenes where these characters are kind of behaving irrationally or out of character. They're doing things and they're saying things that don't just necessarily make a lot of sense. And you're just wondering, why would people do and say these things? So all in all, I didn't really like this movie, but I also didn't dislike it either. I'm pretty neutral down the middle on it, but I also recognize that I'm probably not the target demographic for this movie. I will say there were a lot of kids in my screening. They all seemed to enjoy it. They love to see Stitch running around, just being mischievous. I think if you're going to go see this as a family and take the kids, they'll enjoy it. Maybe you as a parent, you may not get as much out of it. But those are just my thoughts. I am curious to hear your take on Lilo and Stitch. Hop down in the comments, let me know what you thought. And with that said, I'm out of here, guys.